What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my NBA DFS contenders on DraftKings for Wednesday, June 9th. Now, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all of our other content goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Only place you're going to get updates to my sim results as we get closer to lock. Finally, let me know in the comment section who is your favorite and least favorite of my contenders for today's slate. We are rounding out the bottom of my top 10 with Facundo Campazzo, Mikal Bridges, Aaron Gordon, Jay Crowder, and Austin Rivers on the outside looking in. Who will be my favorites? My top 5 plays for today? It's time to find out. First up at number 5, we're going to $7,800 Michael Porter Jr., projected for 35, shows up as the optimal captain 13% of the time, shows up in the flex spot 44% of the time. That's 57% likelihood of being in the optimal. I've got Porter in for 35 minutes. He's been really up and down in this playoffs, but I do think that he can snap out of that at some point in time. 1 fantasy point per minute here, 19 points, 7.5 boards, and then you get a very little amount of everything else. 1.5 assists, almost a steal, almost a block. What you need out of Porter are luck from steals and blocks potentially, and a ton of scoring. 19 points as a baseline wouldn't be surprising at all if Michael Porter goes north of 20, and I think he's in sniffing distance of a double-double. The $7,800 price tag looks really nice. The fact that he's in the optimal at captain 13% of the time, I think that he's going to go over-owned. Apologies. I think he's going to go under-owned in that spot. Next up at number 4, we're going to $8,400 DeAndre Ayton, projected for 36. He's in the captain spot 10% of the time, in the flex spot 47% of the time, tied with Michael Porter Jr., 57% likelihood of being in the optimal lineup. When push comes to shove, everything for Ayton comes down to minutes. If he can keep himself out of foul trouble against NIKOLA JOKIC, he's probably in for a solid game. I got him in for 36 minutes right now, right at a fantasy point per minute, 18% usage, 17 points, 10.5 boards, 2 stocks. Maybe you get an assist or 2 if you cross your fingers. But again, the big piece here for Ayton is being able to stay on the floor. If he gets the minutes, I think that he'll be a value at $8,400. Next up at number 3, we go to $8,800 Chris Paul, projected for 39.5, shows up in the captain spot 14% of the time, shows up in the flex spot 51% of the time. Grand total, 65% likelihood that Paul is in the optimal for today. He had a great game in game 1, and he looked a little bit healthier, was able to play 36 minutes, which is what I've got him in for today. 1.1 fantasy points per minute, 22% usage, and you know what you're getting out of Chris Paul. You're getting decent points, 17. You know you're getting assists, just shy of 9, and a couple boards at 5. Maybe, and this is the big piece, this is the stuff that can propel him in the captain spot, 1.6 steals is the baseline. If he can get to 3 or 4, you're really starting to add points in a great way. 8,800 is a little bit more expensive than I was expecting, but it doesn't appear to change the projections at all. 65% likelihood of being in the optimal is pretty high. There's only 2 guys ahead of him, and they are pretty obvious. Like my number 2 play, Devin Booker, 9,800, projected for 44.5. He's a optimal captain 18% of the time, optimal flex 54% of the time. You can see we took another step up in tier. 72% likelihood that Booker is in the optimal lineup. He's playing monstrous minutes in the playoffs. I've got him in for 40, right around 1.1 fantasy points per minute. And you know what you get from Booker. Heavy amounts of scoring, 31% usage, 29.5 real points, 5 assists, almost 5 boards. But what you need out of Booker is 30 plus points. No doubt about it. That's where you need to be. If you're not getting north of 30 points, it's going to be really hard for Devin Booker to show up in an optimal lineup. 9,800 is not all that problematic of a price, and that's why you see him showing up 72% of the time. One of the few guys north of 60%. It's just Paul, it's just Booker, and it's just the number 1 contender, which is very obvious. But before we get to that obvious play, one last reminder, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Then head to twitter.com and follow me at Josh Engleman. Only place you're going to get updates to my sim results as we get closer to lock. I am on live before lock tonight, so updates will be posted somewhere in that 8 to 8:30 range. This game doesn't lock until late. We're going late for live before lock. Make sure you keep your eyes peeled. Finally, in the comment section under this video, your favorite contender, your least favorite contender, and the contender you thought was going to show up on this list that didn't. The no-brainer number one play for today, $11,800 Nikola Jokic, projected for 55. He's the optimal captain 30% of the time. He's the optimal flex play 52% of the time, which means 82% likelihood that Nikola Jokic is in the optimal lineup for today. He's the closest thing you're going to find to a lock. 37 minutes, 1.5 fantasy points per minute, monster usage, 35% in fact. And then you get into the really crazy numbers. He's projected for a double-double, 30 points, 10 boards, plus 6 assists. So the triple-double bonus is more than in play. You still get 2 stocks. And look, we know what's going on here. He's the highest projected guy by a ton, well north of Devin Booker. If you're playing a lot of Jokic by default. My assumption is that he comes in slightly under-owned at captain and over-owned at flex, but we'll keep our eye on that. Tune into Live Before Lock for the updates. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NBA DFS contenders on DraftKings for Wednesday, June 9th. Now, there was no process show, but there's a FanDuel version of this video around here somewhere, and then I will be on the strategy show with Laffy at 10 a.m. You do not want to miss it. Good luck tonight, everybody. I will talk to you again tomorrow morning for another edition of the Contenders.